Most people in Portugal, Spain, or Thailand answer the question of whether they are an expat or an immigrant too quickly. We choose the word expat because it sounds lighter and more like a temporary lifestyle choice rather than a life sentence. That single word might be the exact reason you feel isolated, frustrated, and unable to truly settle down. The distinction serves as a psychological shield that prevents you from building a real life, rather than just a semantic difference. We need to examine what is actually happening beneath the surface of your integration. Consider the last time you corrected someone who called you an immigrant and realized how much it stung. In 2026, the word expat has become a class marker that signals privilege, a safety net, and a remote job paying in a stronger currency. An immigrant moves for survival, while an expat moves for sunshine, but this distinction creates real danger. Labeling yourself an expat tells your brain that your current situation is temporary. You feel no need to learn the deep grammar of European Portuguese or figure out the local tax system, because you eventually plan to leave. This mindset creates a state of suspended animation where you live in a bubble, physically present in Lisbon or Barcelona, but mentally floating somewhere above it. You become a ghost in your own neighborhood who is recognized but never truly known. The fantasy often hits a concrete wall of reality. When you arrive with a one-year digital nomad visa, planning to surf in Ericeira or eat tapas in Valencia before moving on. Data from 2025 shows that over 35% of people who move for lifestyle reasons end up staying indefinitely, and that number climbs even higher in places like Panama and Portugal. A plan for 1 year often turns into 6 years, deep in a country where you still cannot read a utility bill or navigate a hospital visit without a translator. The temporary phase becomes permanent while you are not looking. Half of all international residents pack up and leave by the 5-year mark because they felt an inability to settle. They left because they treated a marathon like a sprint and burned out, rather than because they truly wanted to go. Calling yourself an expat acts as a form of emotional protection, rather than simple arrogance. Psychologists call this a acculturative stress defense, because admitting you are an immigrant means acknowledging you have left home for good. We cling to the label expat to keep the door to our old life slightly ajar, yet that open door prevents you from fully committing to the new culture. You rely on English-speaking doctors and international schools for every single need, and this dependency creates anxiety, because you genuinely are helpless. True integration requires the vulnerability of sounding like a toddler when you order coffee in Portuguese or Bulgarian. You must be the outsider who tries, rather than the cool foreigner who does not need to, realizing that the bubble is actually a prison. The stakes become terrifyingly high if you have children, entering the danger zone of expat child syndrome. You might assume a 3-year-old will adapt, and they often adapt far better than you do. By the time that child is 8, they are a local who dreams in the language and has a best friend named João or Sofia. Living in an English bubble creates a cultural wedge right through the middle of your living room as you become a foreigner to your own child's experience. A worse scenario involves dragging a teenager across the world with the promise that it is just for a few years. Deciding to go home 5 years later rips them away from the only identity they have managed to build. Third culture kids often struggle with a sense of rootlessness because their parents never fully landed, rather than simply because they moved. The solution is to stop functioning as a tourist in your own life. Ancient commanders used to burn their boats upon landing on enemy shores to ensure their soldiers could not retreat. And you need to mentally burn your own boats. You must shift your vocabulary from wondering if you stay to acknowledging that you live here. Sign up for intense language classes rather than casual conversational ones. and join a local gym where nobody speaks English. Filing your taxes like a local instead of a non-habitual resident changes your label from temporary guest to future citizen. The bureaucracy becomes a challenge to solve rather than a personal attack, and locals start seeing you as a neighbor instead of a walking wallet. Letting go of the safety rope feels terrifying, but it is the only way to stop drowning. The terminology used by the tax office matters less than whether you are building a life or just passing time. The label immigrant serves as a badge of honor that says you are brave enough to start over, rather than as an insult. Dropping the shield allows you to embrace the messiness of really living in your new country. Subscribe for more honest discussions on the psychology of living abroad if you found this reality check useful. You need to stop hovering and finally land.